I waited 5 hours of maintenance to see if the new Windcraft patch was any good! There's problems still. So it's been about 2 weeks since I uploaded my initial video talking about the patch, and since then the patch has come out and a lot of things have changed, so I decided to make a follow-up video. A few days after my video dropped, Salted posted a few responses addressing many of the problems that people had with the update. For one, the class layouts, instead of cutting it to 3, they brought it back up to 5, which isn't the initial 6 that people used to have, but 5 is like a fine number. It's still 1 for every class, so no complaints, I guess. Regarding shinies, they made it so you can no longer infinitely reroll your shiny trackers. They put a limit on it. You can only do it up to 3 times now. And I still don't like the fact that these exist, but I can cope with I can cope with it, I guess. They also changed the shiny glint, so it's not piss colored anymore. I can show it to you really quick. By the way, shaders don't work with the glint, so I have to turn that off. So this is what the new shiny glint looks like, and I think it looks okay, I guess. I mean, they tried to get it a bit closer to what the normal enchant glint was. So it's like kind of like a pinkish purple. So like I am glad that they listened to the feedback regarding that, because goddamn those piss shinies look awful. They also addressed the daily reset tokens for loot runs and raids by just decreasing the amount of times you can stack them from 5 to 3. And I still think it's like terrible the fact that you can stack them. I know that the loot run team didn't have a say regarding these tokens, but it does look really bad that the same patch that made rerolls harder to get also added a way to straight up just buy rerolls. Yeah, I don't know, I think these things shouldn't be stacked, but I can cope with its existence, I guess. It's not gonna ruin my gameplay experience. It's just another thing that I would prefer just didn't really exist, but whatever, moving on. They also mentioned the ownability points. They decreased the number from 6 to 4, but you can still use these ownability points in raids to level scale, which, yikes, that kind of sucks. They did mention that they would monitor its usage in raid scaling, but I honestly doubt that it's ever going to get changed, since it's not a thing that many people really do. Like, you're not going to run into P-Finder and find a bunch of people intentionally scaling and building up the fucking boss, but it's still kind of suspicious balancing wise. But whatever, I probably won't have to interact with it, so I will also cope with the fact that that's a thing now, I guess. So I did address most of the major concerns people had for the patch. But now that the patch itself is actually out, there's some other things that I want to talk about. So for Silverbull shares, they wanted to decrease the value of each share to about 1/5 of what it was before, since there's a lot more things you can buy with Silverbull shares now. So by decreasing the value, it gives a bit more flexibility when it comes to pricing and how much certain things cost. To compensate for this, everybody's current shares was multiplied by 5, which, well, makes sense. And they also mentioned in the initial patch that they would disable any transactions on the trade market for Silverbull shares, which is a good thing. That makes sense, right? Because if you're going to drastically change the value of this item, it makes sense to disable the market for a bit to prevent any confusion and allow prices to adjust accordingly. It also prevents people from getting scammed, people who don't know about the patch and what's happening with Silverbull shares, who might still have buy orders for the old prices. So yeah, that's a good thing. I'm really glad they thought of that beforehand, except they fucked it up. As you can see from this clip I'm showing on screen right now, there were still many buy orders for Silverbull shares for the old price that were on the trade market, meaning people who had their Silverbull shares multiplied by 5 were able to sell their shares for the old price, meaning they effectively just multiplied their money by 5. This also means that a bunch of players basically just got fucking scammed, since they bought a bunch of Silverbull shares for 5 times the price of what they should be now. And it's just something that I can't believe made it to the live servers. As of the time I'm recording this video, no official response has been posted, and the fact that buy orders weren't cancelled hasn't actually been officially recognized by people on the team. And it just fucking sucks for so many endgame players who just got scammed by the Silverbull change. And a bunch of players who did know about the patch also ended up getting scammed, since they put their trust in the Windcraft team, who said in the patch notes that they would disable the transaction of Silverbull shares, only for it to not actually work. And historically, Windcraft has been pretty against refunds and rollbacks, so I highly doubt that anything's actually going to happen as a result of their giant fuck up. But that's not the only thing that is messed up with this patch. So during the beta, there was a bunch of bugs, and many of these bugs didn't get fixed and ended up on the live servers, even though the beta lasted for 2 weeks. For example, the Nexus of the Light raid, still just doesn't work. You can't enter the raid, you can't enter the reward room, and you can't exit the reward room. And it was like that for the entire beta, and that's not the only bug that made it through the live servers. There was a bug with the /use command or the wardrobe or whatever that basically makes you invulnerable. And as far as I'm aware, this bug was reported even before the patch was dropped into Hero Beta. So it's a fucking miracle that it made it into the live servers. And of course, there's a bunch of miscellaneous bugs that also just made it to the live servers. I can just show you one really quick. So as you can see, my knives, they don't have a texture. It was like this during the beta, and it's still broken on the live servers. Now the knives thing is not a big deal, but it's like the beta lasted for 2 weeks, and still so many of these bugs, ranging from extreme minor to straight up game breaking, somehow made it to the patch, and I don't get it. Normally I give the benefit of the doubt whenever a patch drops and there's a bunch of bugs, but this time we had a beta. A beta that was supposed to last a week but got extended to 2 weeks, and still many of these things just did not get fixed. And speaking of the beta, I just want to talk a bit about that as well. I'm really glad that Hero Beta exists. I think it's really cool that players get to test upcoming patches, and I think it's just a win-win for both sides. But I feel like the Hero Beta is not used to its full potential. For one, testing on the beta just kind of sucks sometimes. The patch brought a full Trickster rework, as well as a bunch of other ability changes and a bunch of new aspects, but players didn't have access to the new aspects. And I feel like this just doesn't make sense to me. But I think by not having access to all these aspects, it makes testing a bit inaccurate. Like, you can't test how strong an archetype really is or how good it is if you don't have access to its full power. And speaking of the new aspects, it's crazy to me that most of them just did not get mentioned in the patch notes. It's like a weird thing with Winecraft. I don't get why they have so much secrecy sometimes regarding like new things they add. Especially when there's a beta where they want you to test these things. Like in the patch notes, I think they mentioned how they adjusted the rare raid buffs, and then they just didn't mention what they did to the raid buff, so nobody could give proper feedback on the buffs. Now, you could just keep doing the raids over and over again on the beta until you get the rare buff. But the problem is the fact that the buff rooms didn't work on the beta. It's like, how are players supposed to properly test so many of these things when things just straight up don't work? It's like an entire raid was not functional. TNA also had a bug in Void Matter that made it softly locked. And of course, these things just didn't get changed during the beta, so nobody was able to test Nexus of Light during the beta. And I'm aware that the beta does typically die out pretty fast, so at some point it just isn't really useful anymore. But I think the longevity of this beta was severely damaged by not only all the terrible changes that they made at the start, but also the fact that you straight up just could not test the other things. It's like me personally, I couldn't get myself to get on the beta to run some TNA knowing that every other run I would get softly locked. Another thing I just remembered, in the patch they mentioned how VIP rank would no longer have the additional trade market slots, but they did say that anybody who already has VIP rank will get to keep their trade market slots. Well, yeah, they fucked that up too. And this did get addressed pretty quickly, and they are working on fixing it. But just, again, it just looks so bad that something like this made it to the live servers. And something like that isn't that big of a deal, and it is getting fixed, but what is a big deal is the Silverbull thing, and I still just can't believe that fucking happened. Now, another thing I want to talk about is just ability changes in general. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my content usually revolves around the archetypes in this game and their abilities. So I try my best to stay very up to date on things regarding ability changes and whatnot. And I just have to say that after almost like a year of doing Minecraft content now, I'm just so exhausted by ability changes, to be honest. Now, I think it's really good that the game makes pretty frequent ability changes to try to balance out weaker archetypes or tone down stronger archetypes. But over the course of 2.1, I've just been slowly using more and more faith in the ability team. Generally, I think they do a really good job with coming up with new abilities and designs. When it comes to actually balancing these new abilities or balancing pre-existing abilities, sometimes I just feel like they have no idea what they want to do. And I think a good recent example of this is the Fallen changes related to its healing. So in the patch, they nerfed Intoxicating Blood's heal limit to 30%, and they also added a new node in the tree that's basically the Firebird Major ID. So the less HP you have, the more effective your HPR Knifesteal is. The idea is they want Fallen to actually build HPR Knifesteal, but it just won't work. In order to build enough HP on Knifesteal to heal the missing HP you'd have after exiting Corrupted, you would have to sacrifice so much damage. So much damage to the point where people are never going to actually try to build HP on Knifesteal and instead just chug potions. And that just kind of feels awful to play, and it's exactly what happened when they tried to touch Fallen Sealing the first time when they changed Rally. They changed Rally to see what would happen to Fallen's healing and see how players would adjust, and when they saw that it was clearly problematic, they decided to rework Intoxicating Blood to be the solution to that healing problem. And I do think that Intoxicating Blood was a bit too strong. I mean, it was basically a 100% instant full heal as long as you were hitting things. They reworked the node to be a solution to the healing problem, and then they made the healing problem again by nerfing the healing cap to 30%, and then tried to get you to build HP on the IFC, which again did not work and will not work. Now, I'm not going to actually talk about how balanced I think Fallen's healing is, since I don't think I'm qualified enough to talk about that. But the fact that they keep making changes and then reverting changes and making more changes and then reverting changes, it just kind of shows they don't know what they're doing. Of course, I don't expect everybody on the ability team to know and understand how all 15 archetypes perform in an endgame setting, but so many changes just get made where I'm just confused how they thought this was going to be okay, or how they made these changes without considering the potential implications it would have on people who currently play the archetype. Another example is what they did to Entropy. So before the patch, Entropy would 3 times the speed of your meteors, and this was basically required on Riftwalker to actually hit anything that was capable of moving. But in this patch, they nerfed the speed to plus 50% and added a new node to Riftwalker that doubles the speed of Meteor. Now, I do understand the intent behind this decision, and I do agree. An archetype shouldn't have to basically require a major ID for it to function. It just doesn't feel very intuitive, and if there's an option to make it an ability in the tree, it should just be an ability in the tree. But I think when they made this node, they didn't really consider any potential implications it could have on current Riftwalker tree. But the Riftwalker tree is already pretty builded and pretty AP tight. So by adding a new 1 AP node that is basically mandatory to take, it means a bunch of trees now have to sacrifice things. And Riftwalker isn't an archetype that is strong enough to justify having to sacrifice things in order to get something it used to have before. And during the beta, a lot of feedback was given regarding Entropy, the new node, as well as things that they could do to the tree in order to fit it into the current Riftwalker tree. And one of the solutions that players suggested was just reducing the ability point cost of certain abilities, like maybe Eye Piercer, which is a 2 ability point node that you have to take that also just doesn't do much endgame wise since like everything has CCI. And despite all the amount of feedback that was given, the patch dropped and nothing was really done. Now, this doesn't mean that they can't still make changes to it, but this is just a problem that I have in general. Sometimes they are so adamant and set on things that it just feels fucking impossible sometimes. Now, there's a few examples of this, abilities or just things that a lot of people just are not a fan of. Things like Flying Kick and Archer Recoil have existed for so long despite so many people hating it. And I just don't get why some of these things have to exist. Like, Aerostorm Recoil feels like such an unnecessary downside for Boltzinger, which doesn't really have a meaningful upside to make up for it. And speaking of Boltzinger and a bunch of archetypes are just stuck in a state of limbo. Boltzinger hasn't received any meaningful changes in months, and it never got the compensation it was supposed to get for Bouncing Bomb aspect removal. And I just feel bad for Boltzinger players and players of a bunch of other archetypes that probably won't get any changes until Fruma. And speaking of Fruma, this might be a bit of a hot take. Like, I get they want Fruma to be as good as possible in order to live up to the years of hype that has been built up. But as a player, it feels like we're busy working on Fruma is just used as a convenient excuse to not do certain things yet. When it comes to archetypes, it's clear that the team isn't entirely against band-aid changes. I mean, Sharpshooter just got some really good band-aid changes. But I don't understand why Sharpshooter can have these band-aid changes, but other archetypes just don't get anything. And also probably won't get anything until Fruma. I also raise my eyebrow when I see we're busy working on Fruma, but then they drop a patch reworking the wardrobe and adding pay to win. Now, this might be a hot take, but I personally would not mind if Fruma was just delayed a few months in order for other aspects of the game to get some touch-ups. Regarding archetypes, simple number changes for stuff like Acrobat and Boltzinger would probably be massive for people who play those archetypes until Fruma comes out. And another thing that I think severely needs an overhaul that has been kind of bothering me and a few other media ranks that I've been talking to is just Wincraft's social systems. Wincraft has a bunch of old systems that just feel incredibly out of date and just don't make any sense. The friend system, for example, is very strange. You can add whoever you want onto your friends list and the other person has no say regarding it. The friend system shouldn't be called a friend system because, quite frankly, it is not a friend system. It's more akin to like Instagram or Twitter followers. You can add whoever you want onto your friends list. Except at least in those systems, you can see who follows you, you can go private. You know when someone adds you to your friends list on Wincraft and you get a notification in chat that somebody's added you as a friend? Well, did you know that only shows up if that person is in the same world as you? And of course, there's no way to see who has you added as a friend. And the friend thing is just one of many weird ways that you can just stalk people on Wincraft. Slash ignore is also kind of jank because you can still see messages from people who are in your party, which is pretty awful since you will often get stuck in a party with people if you like raid in P-Finder. There's also just nothing you can really do about messages and party invites. And there's also just nothing you can really do if somebody just keeps following you around everywhere. This is a bit of an issue when Unicrash was doing his Completionist series. For his first stream, he was just unable to kill things to progress in quests sometimes because people would just follow him and insta-kill everything. And I gotta admit, at the start, that was pretty fucking funny, I can't lie. But at some point, I imagine it does get really annoying and there's not much you can really do about it. Since the Meteor World has just been down for months. I don't know how long it's been down, but I remember when I first got Meteor rank and I tried to check out the Meteor World only to find out, oh, it's not open. And even when Crasher tried to do CS stream, it didn't do anything.
What? A little birdie told me that Lunacrash is looking... Why would you shout that? I have streamed no... What? Why are people still... No! Why are people still able to message me? Oh, shake your belly, Unk is a crazy message. Alright, well, Slash stream didn't do jack shit. I'm actually kind of upset.
Like, he tries to go into CS stream, but as you can see, you can still message people. People can still message you, and they can also see what world that you're in, which defeats the point of CS stream. But other people have brought this issue up before, and the response is, we're busy working on Fruma. Like, I don't get why so many things just aren't going to be changed until after Fruma, even though many of these things probably won't take that long to fix. And it just feels like they arbitrarily decide what they want to do before Fruma and what just doesn't get touched until after. It also just doesn't help that patches just feel rushed every time. Stuff like the Silverbull Buy Orders making it to the live server should have just never been a thing. It just ends up hurting so many players and it's just a giant fuck you that probably won't get addressed. And it just sucks. I don't know. To be honest, I've been feeling very unmotivated recently to play Winecraft and make content on it. I did say in my initial video that I'd quit if things weren't addressed, and I'm probably not going to be quitting right now, but I don't know how much longer I'm going to realistically be doing Winecraft content. I've got other things going on in my life at the moment and other things that I kind of want to do. I've been doing Winecraft content as a hobby and out of my genuine passion and love for the game, but I think my passion for the game has just been waning as time goes on. I just don't feel as excited to Yalgon anymore, and I think every time a patch comes out I just end up really disappointed. But yeah, that's it I guess. Signing off, B-Monk video, I'll get to eventually, bye!